Refriended Australian news to be reinstated to Facebook following intense negotiations with the government. Australia to increase the job seeker rate by $50 a fortnight, but not everyone is convinced it's enough. Controversial MP Craig Kelly quits the Liberal Party. And NASA releases breathtaking video capturing the arrival of the Perseverance rover on the Red Planet.
This is SBS World News with Virginia Langeberg.
Good evening. Treasurer Josh Frydenberg has described it as the day Facebook refriended Australia. The social media giant has settled its bitter dispute with the federal government, agreeing to pay Australian news outlets for content, with news pages in the country set to be restored on the site in the coming days. Both parties striking a truce almost a week after Facebook's controversial and unexpected blackout.
After taking on one of the world's biggest tech companies, the Treasurer late this afternoon announcing a compromise.
Facebook has refriended Australia.
Facebook with another about-face, cutting a deal with the federal government after abruptly blocking all Australian news on its platform.
It's been a difficult process, but these are really important issues. Australian journalists who generate original content should be remunerated for that.
Josh Frydenberg and Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg speaking 6 times in the past 2 days in what's been described as intense negotiations over Australia's media bargaining code.
Facebook has committed to entering into good faith negotiations with Australian news media businesses. We have agreed to make some clarifications to the code.
Facebook last Thursday shocked its 17 million Australian users by taking down news sites, furious at being forced to pay for content. The blackout inadvertently blocked dozens of essential health and emergency pages with it.
The fact of the matter is their behaviour last week was regrettable, and I expressed that very directly to Mark himself.
The federal government agreeing on amendments to the code. Facebook now given a 1-month notice before it will apply, and the power to pull news from its site at any time.
Will be important in terms of smaller and regional publishers. There's a mechanism there for a default offer for smaller and regional publishers.
The news ban, in return, lifted. Facebook's Australian Managing Director saying, "We're pleased we've been able to reach an agreement and appreciate the constructive discussions over the past week. We are satisfied the Australian government has agreed to a number of changes and guarantees that address our core concerns about allowing commercial deals that recognise the value our platform provides."
Well, there's no doubt that Australia has been a proxy battle for the world. Facebook and Google have not hidden the fact that they know that the eyes of the world are on Australia. And that's why they have sought, I think, to get a code here that is workable.
Google had already struck deals with Australian news outlets worth tens of millions of dollars. Facebook not ruling out a similar move in the future. Its relationship with Australia still complicated. Omar Dehan, SBS World News.
Unemployed Australians will receive an extra $50 a fortnight, with the government announcing a permanent rise in the job seeker rate once the coronavirus supplement ends in March. But advocacy groups say the rise, which amounts to just $3.50 a day, will keep Australians who are struggling to find work living below the poverty line. It's the first increase in real terms since the mid-1990s.
Ashley Stevenson has been unable to find work for the past 7 years. She's been relying on the generosity of friends to put a roof over her head.
I don't hold out any hope of getting a job now because I'm 65 and there is age discrimination out there.
But when the pandemic hit, the government raised the dole rate, a boost of $550 a fortnight. And for the first time, Ms Stevenson says she was able to live with dignity.
The job seeker COVID supplement enabled me to buy decent food, medicine, pay for the phone, the internet.
Coming under increasing pressure from welfare groups, unions and Labor, the government today announcing it will permanently increase the rate of the dole for the first time in 25 years.
The economic recovery plan continues to roll out, but we change gears. What we are doing now is we are rebasing the job seeker payment.
Unemployed Australians set to receive an extra $50 a fortnight, taking the total allowance to around $620, equating to around $310 a week or just over $44 a day. But welfare groups say the modest $4 increase from the old New Start rate of just $40 a day isn't good enough.
Everybody had said we could never go back to the brutality of the previous New Start rate. This $3.50 per day is a measly, mean-spirited, complete betrayal of what is needed.
Labor agreeing but unable to name a preferred rate.
Labor will not be nominating a figure on whether it's enough or not.
The government also announcing the restoration of mutual obligations.
There will be a requirement for job seekers to attend face-to-face appointments.
Job seekers will have to apply for 15 jobs a month, rising to the pre-pandemic requirement of 20 in July. The income-free threshold too will increase.
We know that people who report earnings are twice as likely to transition off payment.
The government says the increased rate of the dole will cost taxpayers $9 billion over the next 4 years, and the new rate will encourage people to seek out paid work.
Every person we get in a job, they're better off and the country's better off.
As for Ms Stevenson, she's disappointed but says she's not surprised, holding on and hoping for better times ahead. Shubha Krishnan, SBS World News.
Controversial MP Craig Kelly has quit the Liberal Party, today leaving the Morrison government with a one-seat majority. Mr Kelly has come under fire in recent weeks for peddling unproven coronavirus treatments. The Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, says despite the loss, the government will continue to function normally.
Once a rogue backbencher taking the coalition's spotlight.
Are you making any big announcements?
Causing controversy for contradicting the nation's health experts and peddling unproven coronavirus treatments.
The member for Hughes...
The former coalition MP, now an independent, today quitting the Liberal Party.
With a heavy heart, I resigned from the Liberal Party.
Scott Morrison surprised by the resignation.
I learned it at the same time as he announced it to the party room.
Mr Kelly says despite defecting from the party, he's still a Liberal at heart and will provide the government with supply and confidence, though he's now free to say what he likes.
The issue of speaking out on these COVID treatments is my main reason for making the decision that I have. I'm saying you are...
Following this public clash, Scott Morrison counselled the MP.
I set out some very clear standards. He no longer felt that he could meet those commitments.
While no longer a thorn to the PM's side, it does mean the government now has a one-seat majority.
Can the Prime Minister confirm that today the government has lost its majority on the floor of the House of Representatives?
If the Leader of the Opposition is feeling so confident, Mr Speaker, about the performance of his opposition, Mr Speaker, well then perhaps he'd like to bring on a motion.
Craig Kelly's pre-selection in the Sydney seat of Hughes was under threat. At the last election, Mr Morrison intervened to save him.
Today the member for Hughes has done what the Prime Minister didn't have the courage to do and sacked himself from the Liberal Party.
The announcement comes as a key advisor to Mr Kelly reportedly faces allegations of inappropriate behaviour. Frank Zumbo is also the subject of an apprehended violence order. Scott Morrison says he's long had concerns about the staffer, but they were unrelated to recent events.
I've long held issues regarding a particular staff member and their performance in that office, but that reached a more serious point in recent weeks.
No longer having to toe the party line, some fear Craig Kelly will be emboldened to deliver misinformation. He intends to contest the next election as an independent, but there's growing momentum within his electorate to have him unseated. Pablo Vinales, SBS World News.
As the world races to immunise against COVID-19, Australia has taken delivery of its second batch of the Pfizer vaccine. The Health Minister says Australians should feel confident the country's rollout is on track with no supply issues, and the AstraZeneca vaccine will be ready to be administered early next month.
It was the Labor leader's turn to roll up his sleeve as Australia's vaccine rollout continued.
Does it hurt?
No.
The Greens leader got his first dose too.
Not doing anything I haven't asked my daughters to do over the
last couple of years.
Political figures sharing an important public safety message.
Vaccines don't save lives, vaccinations do. We need Australians to get vaccinated.
I feel good, I feel fine, and tell you what, it certainly feels a lot better than being under lockdown or ending up in hospital.
A second delivery of the Pfizer vaccine unloaded in Sydney overnight, an additional 166,000 doses, another 120,000 due next week.
The consistency of supply has been strong and heartening, and that just gives Australians confidence.
The Health Minister confident AstraZeneca injections will be available early next month, with the CSL Australian-made vaccine ready by the end of March. Tasmania's program also underway, with a nurse who has treated COVID patients chosen to receive the state's first shot.
I didn't feel it at all. It's super important for me to get this vaccine to not only protect myself, but to be able to continue delivering care to Tasmanians,
One of the country's peak Islamic bodies, the Imams Council, clarifying that both the Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccines are safe.
The vaccines that are currently being administered do not contain any prohibited substances and therefore are permissible from a religious perspective.
Australia is just days into its immunisation campaign. More than 90 countries now vaccinating their citizens, with estimates more than 200 million doses have already been administered around the world. Felicity Davey, SBS World News.
Air New Zealand will trial a digital vaccination passport on its flights between Auckland and Sydney from April this year. The application, developed by industry body International Air Transport Association, allows passengers to share their COVID-19 test results and vaccination status with the airline prior to boarding. The app is already in use by Emirates, and Qatar will begin a trial next month. The aim is to provide seamless and quarantine-free travel through international airports.
Each and every country has its own little app or its own sort of paper certificates where you don't really know, is this, reliable? Is this, and how do you authenticate that and then verify that information? And the only way to do it is really through a global app and through something that's industry-led, through IATA. I think that's a great approach.
Qantas previously indicated it intends to make vaccinations compulsory for passengers boarding flights to or from Australia. A spokesperson says the airline is looking into the applications available. Coming up, protesters back on the streets of Myanmar, a day after a call for a general strike closed shops and businesses across the country.
Everyone in this town carries a secret. Everyone cheats and spies because that is what it takes to survive.
One day in Berlin and you're already catching on.
The war is over. Put down your weapon.
It's not like they're innocent, these people.
You think you've been to war, but you have no idea.
The war is not over. Just entered another phase.
Shadowplay starts Thursday, March 4 on SBS and on demand.
Bye. Shut up and take my money.
When it comes to making Jalna farm-to-pot organic yoghurt, it's a family affair. Hello, Australian dairy farming family. You see, new Jalna farm-to-pot organic yoghurt is made with whole milk from certified organic Australian dairy farms to produce smooth and creamy yoghurt with a clean, fresh taste. Go easy, Millie. New Jalna farm-to-pot organic yoghurt. If only everything was so pure.
SBS would like to thank our broadcast partners of the NBL, Hungry Jack's and Bunnings Trade.
We're here for the road less travelled, and we're here for peak hour.
We're here for the smooth, and we're here for the rough. And whatever else the Territory can throw at you. Literally. That's why we offer the option for no excess for 1 windscreen replacement and 2 windscreen repairs. Because we live here too. Yep. TIO Comprehensive Car Insurance. We're for Territorians.
Mastermind is back for a brand new season.
When Harry Met Sally, Captain America, The Smiths,
Britney Spears. I'm going to expect a full performance later, just so you know.
The new season of Mastermind, weeknights at 6 on SBS and on demand.
Proving absolutely nothing's going to rain on their parade, Mardi Gras found a temporary new home at the iconic SCG.
This year, we're rising to new heights and new grounds. Live and fabulous with your hosts, Norelda Jacobs, Joel Creasy, Zoe Coombsma and Courtney Act. Live Saturday 6th of March on SBS On Demand, or tune in for the full parade at 7:30 on SBS.
Tens of thousands of people in Myanmar are back on the streets tonight after scores heeded a nationwide strike against military rule. Demonstrations have so far been peaceful, despite warnings by authorities they could spark a potentially deadly confrontation. At least 3 people were killed by security forces over the weekend. There's been global condemnation, with the UN calling for an end to the military's repression and Britain summoning Myanmar's ambassador for the second time. An Indian court has granted bail to climate activist Disha Ravi. The 22-year-old was arrested for sharing a document intended to help farmers protesting against new agricultural laws. Police said Disha Ravi was a key conspirator in the formulation and dissemination of a protest toolkit. Police have accused her of sedition and conspiracy, charges she's denied. Police in Georgia have stormed the headquarters of the main opposition party to arrest its leader, Nika Melia. Police used ladders to scale the building and gain access from the roof. Supporters of the United National Movement Party had barricaded themselves inside, using office furniture to block doors and keep the police out. But the resistance wilted when tear gas was used and Melia was taken into custody. Last week, Prime Minister Gyorke Gakari resigned in protest at the ruling party's decision to arrest the opposition leader on charges of organising mass violence during anti-government protests in 2019. The number of Australian permanent residency visas granted to Hong Kongers has risen sharply since the introduction of a controversial national security law in the Territory in July last year. The data was obtained exclusively by SBS under Freedom of Information Act, and some immigration experts say it's a trend they expect will continue. Investigative journalist Lynn Evelyn has this report.
Keith is getting ready for his big move. He's among a wave of Hong Kongers who have had their permanent residency or PR visas approved in recent months. He works as a registered nurse in the city and hopes to bring his expertise tackling the COVID pandemic to Australia.
It was very exciting because I thought their visa would be suspended till the mid-2021 because of the COVID situation.
Data obtained under FOI from July to November last year found the Home Affairs Department granted 1,849 PR visas to Hong Kongers, an increase of 26% compared to the previous 5 months. The figures also show applicants most often proceeded to PR through the skilled visa streams, with the number of skilled PR visas approved doubling compared to the previous 5 months.
This new information indicates further that the government is prioritising permanent resident visa applications from Hong Kong citizens and perhaps bringing those cases to the head of the processing queue.
That's despite a fall in the overall number of PR visas granted on average in the last 6 months of 2020, according to the Home Affairs Department. The department also told SBS applicants with critical or specialist skills in support of the government's response to COVID-19 or the country's economic recovery would be prioritised when it comes to visa approvals. But some immigration lawyers believe the uptick could also be linked to the introduction of the national security law in Hong Kong last year, which has brought a wide-ranging crackdown on dissent.
The government has announced a number of policies. Those policies are specifically for applicants from Hong Kong or students. So certainly I would not say it's just a coincidence.
The federal government offered visa extensions to Hong Kongers on skilled and graduate visas in Australia and created incentives for businesses in the territory to move their operations here last year. Lynn Evelyn, SBS World News.
And that story was researched and produced in collaboration with Yu Wai Lin and Tracy Lowe from SBS Chinese. The Victorian Premier says he's prepared to rip up Crown Casino's gaming licence after announcing a royal commission into its operations. It comes after the Bergen report in New South Wales deemed Crown unsuitable to hold a licence for the newly built Barangaroo Tower in Sydney. The opposition accuses the Premier of being dragged kicking and screaming by the scathing findings of the report and ignored previous warnings of money and criminal infiltration.
I'm not someone who looks backwards. I've just made an important decision. Cabinet's made an important decision and we're going to get the right outcome here. I haven't got time to be engaging in that sort of stuff.
Victorian taxpayers will have some interest in the findings as the previous government agreed to pay Crown up to $250 million should its licence conditions change. To the Australian share market now, which despite trading in the red for much of the morning, finished nearly 1% higher, driven by a strong performance by the energy sector and miners. BHP broke through $50. The banks also did well, including Bank of Queensland, after it successfully raised money for its purchase of ME Bank. Those gains came at the expense of tech companies like Afterpay. Wesfarmers also declined. Seek dropped 7%. It is splitting its business with former CBA boss Ian Narev to become its new CEO. Markets in Europe were mixed in early trade and the Australian dollar is buying just above 79 US cents. NASA has released breathtaking video capturing the arrival of the Perseverance rover on the planet Mars. Scientists say the spectacular details offered by the technology are only a taste of what's to come, as Perseverance begins its 2-year mission on the red planet in search of ancient life.
The parachute has deployed.
Looking up, these images place viewers on a spacecraft that's just been descending at a rate faster than the speed of sound.
It gives me goosebumps every time I see it. Just amazing.
As a heat shield separates, cameras on the rover bring the red planet into view.
Their first look at the surface.
Then a gentle descent towards the targeted landing site, Mars's Jezero crater.
We're actually beginning to fly east. That's why you can see the delta over there.
The rover lowered down by its rocket-propelled sky crane for a nail-biting touchdown, with the crane then captured blasting away.
Touchdown confirmed. Perseverance safely on the surface of Mars.
It's here the rover will search for signs of ancient microscopic life in the surrounding terrain.
You know, you see the mountains back there and the rocks and things. It's just, it really is the surface of an alien world.
And for the first time ever, a chance to hear a Mars wind gust blowing by.
And just imagine yourself sitting on the surface of Mars and listening to the surroundings.
The latest vision capping off a busy couple of days in human space travel. Chinese President Xi Jinping also paying tribute to his own country's space achievements. Last December, a burnt-out Chang'e E5 probe landing in Mongolia. It was the first successful mission in 4 decades to collect and bring back rock samples from the moon. The final frontier is looking busier and more resourced than ever.
NASA astronaut Kate Rubins prepares for an upcoming spacewalk.
These images showing the arrival of the latest spacecraft at the ISS space station, delivering nearly 4 tonnes of supplies. And with these new and breathtaking opportunities for greater interaction and engagement, the wonders of space exploration are likely to form a greater part of our everyday lives. Dom Vukovic, SBS World News.
Coming up, the weather and the covert mission to release 10 orangutans back into the wild.
This Mardi Gras, come together with NITV.
People are just realising gender is much more fluid.
Experience the highs and lows.
I am what I am, and nobody's going to take that away from me.
To celebrate our LGBTQI+ communities.
Look at all the talent in this room, all deadly black sisters. I think we should get the show started, don't you?
Celebrating Mardi Gras starts Monday 8 p.m. on NITV and on demand.
Discover Australian history in all its glorious colour.
Everybody's eye follows Phylap.
The victories, the challenges, and the often untold history. Australia in Colour starts Wednesday 10th of March on SBS and on demand.
Now this is a story all about how fast food got flipped, turned upside down. It took one huge bite of that foot-long bread and said, yo, skip the grease and eat fresh instead.
Get out.
Exceedingly good cakes.
We get two sorts of blokes by an engine guard overheating alarm. The first, seen our ad on the telly for years. Sensor on the motor, display on the dash, buzzer if she's getting hot. Now they're going travelling and don't want to deal with a cooked engine. The others have just dealt with a cooked engine and never want that again. We could have saved them heaps. Like I'm saying, I wouldn't travel without it.
We're here for whatever the territory can throw at you. Literally. That's why we offer the option for no excess for 1 windscreen replacement and 2 windscreen repairs. TIO Comprehensive Car Insurance. We're for Territorians.
No matter how much our lives change,
all I could see in Mum's eyes was pain.
One thing stays the same.
Sorry.
The power of our stories.
Kumi Taguchi hosts the new season of Insight. Starts March 16 on SBS and on demand.
كيف تعمل لقاحات كوفيد-19؟
¿Cómo podrás acceder a ellas?
SBS yiyemeje kumenyesha abanyaustralia bose
về kế hoạch triển khai vaccine ngừa Covid-19 của chính phủ.
ਇਸ ਲਈ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਕੋਈ ਹੋਰ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਬੋਲਦੇ ਹੋ ਤਾਂ
请用您的语言获取有关疫苗的信息与事实，获取信息，保持安全，拯救生命。
Visita sbs.com.au/coronavirus.
To the weather now, and in the major centres, showers expected in Sydney and Brisbane tomorrow, sunny in Perth, showers and a possible storm for Darwin, partly cloudy in Adelaide, Canberra, Hobart and Melbourne. Looking further afield, a few showers in Auckland, thunder in Samoa and rain in Tahiti. In Southeast Asia, partly cloudy in Bangkok, thunder in Kuala Lumpur, fine in Singapore. Further north, cloudy in Seoul, a few showers for Manila and drizzle in Taipei. Heading west, partly cloudy in Islamabad, fine in Beirut, fog in Delhi and windy in Tehran. To Europe, fine in Rome, partly cloudy in Madrid and drizzle in Istanbul. In Africa, drizzle in Cairo, fine in Casablanca, thunder in Johannesburg. In South America, cloudy in Bogota, fine in Santiago, partly cloudy in Panama City. And for North America, fine in Mexico City, partly cloudy in Washington DC and snow in Toronto. A covert mission to release 10 rehabilitated orangutans back into the wild has been completed in the forests of Borneo. It was no easy feat. Each primate had to be tranquilised and transported via helicopter and boat back to the forest. Desperate to avoid any chance of human to primate transmission, the relocation team and orangutans were also COVID tested. It's feared the critically endangered species could become extinct in the next 10 years due to habitat loss. A further 23 orangutans will be rehabilitated and released in the future. And that's the world this Tuesday. The SBS News website has all the latest stories. You can get news anywhere, anytime with the SBS News app. Good night.